Hey everybody, it is when I'm coming to you from the think tank. And yeah, don't panic. This is actually happening. It's going to be a tech video regarding France. Um, a lot of people may immediately go, why? Why are you doing this? Well, I think that there is some merit to this in this edition, more so than in the last edition. In part because I think France has a slightly better chance of surviving past the initial German attack in this, and they have a bit of a better chance of being liberated and becoming a major power again and being able to roll tech dice. Just kind of from what I see. I'm not saying that's correct. It just looks that way when I kind of read through the rules and have played a couple games now. And so when I talk about France and its technology options, I'm going to do it from two different perspectives. The first perspective is, what if France doesn't fall right away and has a time to move past stage two for the technologies, and actually has a chance of getting a technology before they fall or if they fall. And then the second way I'm going to look at them is that France does fall, and then they actually liberate Paris and become a major power again, and how to look at text from that. So I'm going to kind of do them in that order too. So first, I'm going to look at this and say, all right, well, what if France doesn't fall right away? Either Germany has a Russia first policy in whatever game you're playing, so France has a chance to survive, or the Germans just muck it up and France survives, or at the very least survives a lot longer than they would have otherwise, and they can continue rolling past stage two, which is a possibility, even if they fall later. Well, at that point, what kind of text do you want to look at? Now, I'm going to make an assumption when I look at France in that regard, and that assumption is going to be that France is primarily going to be locked in a land battle, that there is not going to be a whole lot of wiggle room to do a bunch of naval stuff or airborne stuff and things like that. Now, I'm not saying that's beyond their own possibility, but we're gonna at that point we're deviating so far off the rails that it's hard to predict how the game is going to look, and you know it'd be and I mean I'm perfectly okay speculating, but we're quickly getting into the realm of speculating to the point of you know okay, well, is that really going to happen? Who knows? We just have to play it as it comes. So I'm going to be talking about that I'm going to be presuming that they're going to be predominantly locked in a land battle with Germany in this in Western and Central Europe. Now, of course, they do have colonies elsewhere, and but most of the texts that we're going to be talking about anyway aren't going to have a huge impact on that. Um, and that'll make a little more sense as I talk about them. But first, let's look at okay. Let's If you're playing and you decide or you have an opportunity as France to live beyond your normal life expectancy in this game, what kind of tech do you want to roll for? So right off the bat, advanced mech and advanced artillery are two excellent choices. They're just stronger units. If you live long enough to start building them, then they just increase the chances you're going to continue to live to build more because they're straight upgrades for units that you may already be building, particularly advanced artillery. I think you're more likely to be building advanced artillery, assuming you're still very much on the defensive, um, if you manage to live long enough to actually get that technology. But then again, what's your play style? Maybe Germany. Maybe the line is still. Maybe the Maginot Line is still intact, and Germany hasn't even come into Paris, and they're still at war. Well, then maybe advanced mech might be your better bet because you want to be able to build them in Paris, and then immediately start threatening liberating Belgium or Western or Eastern Germany or Bavaria and whatnot. So just but those are two very clear cut ones to roll for in that scenario. Radar, probably not. Um, there's not a whole lot to be gained from this. I think you're better off getting the stronger units. Now, of course, there is the interception, and maybe Germany is doing a lot of bombing onto the factory in Paris to keep them from building stuff. But you know, eh, I still, so there is that. There is that. I will say that there is that. That maybe you want some defensive stuff to be able to keep his bombers at bay. But at this point, Britain can afford to probably send you a couple to help fighters to help keep them at bay, and this isn't going to be a huge thing. Much later in the game, maybe they are shooting strategic rockets at you, but that's so far in the game. And remember, France is only ever going to have one tech die. You're not gonna, the likelihood of building a second major factory with France is pretty slim. I can't see any practical reason why you'd want to do that, to be perfectly honest. So, I think that you're far better off going for just better units to win that land war. Radar's not going to help with that. ASW is almost completely pointless for them. They don't have convoy lines at all in this edition, which I think is a shame. I think they should. The only thing that they would get any sort of benefit from is their naval transports defending at one against subs, and seaplanes getting +2 attack bonus against subs when on map. But that's so paltry that why bother? Um, Improve factories. Now, a France at full wartime income has $18. I believe it's $18 before, and then they get like a couple dollars in bonus income. So if you think as the French player you're going to live past and continue to fight, I could see improved factories so you can make sure you have enough space to pump out the units you want each turn. Um, but then again, $18 to $20 isn't a huge amount, and then I'm sure you're going to lose some of that somewhere to Japan or Italy. So I wouldn't know, but this is a high priority, though I wouldn't put it beyond the realm of possibility either. And if you are and if you survive as France and you are getting heavily bombed, being able to pump out 8 units, that at the very least gives you more of a cushion for the damage he does because major factories reduce their output equal to the number of damage tokens they have. So, if he damages your 5, you can still build 3 units. So it gives you a little more cushion. Improved construction. Um, so the bonus, so much like I said with improved factories, the increased output gives you a cushion. Same thing with the reducing the amount of damage incoming. It gives you a little bit of cushion. Where some turns, hopefully, he's just going to whiff on the dice and roll really low, and you can completely disregard the damage. The other abilities probably aren't going to be that much useful. You're probably not building a lot of facilities with the French. I mean, there is a possibility maybe you're going to get a fortification up at some point or want to replace the Maginot Line if it was lost or whatever the case is. Um, but again, though, and it's always nice to be able to stretch your dollar further. But I think you're still better off going for the just advanced mech or advanced artillery. I think it's going to win you the battles better. Airborne doctrine, yeah, I they don't even start with a air transport, so I wouldn't bother. Amphibious doctrine, yeah, maybe you still have your transports out there, but quite frankly, who cares? Now the French, in theory, could directly threaten Italy if Italy's getting hinky or they try to get hinky, and they can, bring all their fleet together down here. But at the end of the day, I think this is an example where you normal transports are going to do the job just as well in most cases as assault transports, and they're still probably not going to have a ton of Marines to make any sort of difference if you wanted to use assault transports. So yeah, I don't really see this being useful. Um, Now, heavy armor is a step behind advanced artillery or advanced mech. It's not beyond the realm of possibility. This is what you would prefer, just to be able to build less high quality units, and these do have great stats. But I still think you're better off just building the cheaper upgraded units, more of them, to create a wall of units between you and any sort of future German offensives. Jet fighters, they're just too expensive. I think at this point, if you're looking for a way to maybe, let's say, protect your factories from strategic bombing, you're better off just going for radar at that point rather than investing in jet fighters because they're just so expensive, and you don't have now while you're not paltry at your 20 income or whatever it ends up being. France isn't paltry at that. You still don't have a lot of wiggle room. Long range aircraft. Um, yeah, if you survive, this one's okay because you might actually have some aircraft. You might have been lend lease some, and it's always nice to be able to reach further. However, if you're just continuously fighting to survive, I still wouldn't want to roll for this one. I'd rather the better artillery. Advanced subs, no. Large ship construction, no. How are you going to build them? You're not going to have the money. Heavy strategic bombers, no. Strat rockets, no. Improved logistics, no. And I say no to all of these again, presuming that you are predominantly going to be locked in a land battle here with Germany. Even if it's a standoff, you're going to be locked in a battle here. And you're not going to have a whole lot of freedom to do a lot of. Even though you have an absolutely impressive navy, you're still not going to. I don't foresee you having a lot of freedom to use it other than a sledgehammer to keep the Italians in check or to keep the Germans really in check compared to what you would normally be able to do. So, quite frankly, there's only two techs I would consider right off the bat as France if I'm hoping to survive past the initial German attack. Personally, now let's look at the possibility of what kind of techs. Now, if you think there's a decent chance you will liberate Paris later in the game, maybe you would look at techs and reevaluate which ones you would roll for leading up to the actual war. And if that's the case, I actually think advanced mech and advanced artillery are still top tier without a doubt. But it does change how I feel about some of the other technologies. I still feel radar is a non-starter. Now, and if you are able to liberate Paris, now if France survives, they're going to have a huge chunk of their navy. They're going to have most, or really all their navy left, other than what they lose in combat. Assuming that some combat takes place that would damage it here and there. And so, in that sense, that they're going to have their navy. They're going to still have a decent amount of land units here because they're going tit for tat with Germany over here. And that being the case, now if they have to liberate Paris, their navy is in tatters unless they roll exceedingly well for the Free French rolls. Even then, you're still going to have a chunk of that's going to go either Vichy or scuttled or German or Japanese. So they're going to have way less naval units. They're not going to have a huge army to land to help reinforce France itself. And odds are they're going to be relying heavily on the Allies to keep the Germans at bay while they start, being able to actually build things and roll tech again. But what you might actually get and start off with okay is an air force if you're able to liberate Paris, because you can now put your airplanes from the French airplanes on map here in the English Channel or somewhere, and when this go and they automatically go free French, so they automatically just land in British territory, assuming that's an option. Uh, they just land in British or friendly territory. In most cases, it's going to be Britain, so they can just go on map here in the English Channel and become free French automatically. So if you do that, if you are a player who does that, you're going to probably have at least one fighter and one medium bomber. And I've already seen a player build a second fighter just to put him up here, just to make sure it goes free French. So even if the Allies, even if you don't have any land units here, you do have the option of being able to you might actually have an air force that can get to France pretty quickly if that's where you want it to be. So with that in mind, you're not going to have any land units, but you might have an air force. So I actually am keeping that in mind as a possible way of thinking about this when I look at these texts now. Now that we're switching gears and see what would I rather have if I can liberate Paris. And so in that sense, radar might actually get moved up a little bit because you now will have an air base in France and you can scramble a bunch of fighters, and you might actually want to scramble a ton of fighters to help actually stop any sort of German counteroffensive or Italian counteroffensive. And you might very well want all the British fighters and all the U.S. fighters to come land there to help with that. And so being able to just get them all up in a single turn wherever they need to go, yeah, that's a desirable thing to have. So I still don't necessarily consider it top tier, but that is something worth considering. And then if you are getting the factory bombed or the airfield bombed, having the extra intersection would be nice as well. And then it does give you the chance to shoot down strat rockets if the German player has them. So, there is some argument why radar might be useful if France comes back. So, anti submarine warfare, yeah, still no. Improve factories, yeah. Again, for the same reasons you might get it if France, you might want it if France survives. It gives more cushion. It lets you build more stuff at your only factory because you're only going to have that one factory. Improved construction, again, more protection. Now, you might actually at this point be considering building another facilities elsewhere to have more air bases or even a secondary factory somewhere in France for whatever reason. Sure, I don't think it's beyond the realm of possibility. But is it worth rolling for improved construction? I'd still say no, personally. Airborne doctrine, probably not. Again, once Paris gets liberated and you actually have some money to spend there, you're probably just going to be building troops, just ground pounders. Yeah, you might build the occasional fighter because you want some attack and whatever. Yeah, that makes sense. But it's probably just going to be more guys, and you're not gonna have the spare money to do tricky things like airborne doctrine. And quite frankly, the at that point, the United Kingdom and the United States are in a far better place to be the ones worrying about getting airborne doctrine and dropping airborne in the backfield than the French are. I mean, hypothetically speaking, of course. Amphibious doctrine, yes, still probably not really worth it for them. Heavy armor, yeah, okay. It would be nice to maybe have heavy armor to have some really be able to drop a couple really good heavy hitting units right away to take the fight to Germany. But yeah, I just think more cheaper units would be the better way to go overall, and jet fighters for the same reason. And I'm assuming that even if you liberate Paris, you'll have even less money than if Paris survives because you're going to have Vichy territories out there. You're going to have, well, no, I'm sorry. Vichy will have surrendered by that point, which when you retake Paris, Vichy surrenders. But they might still be Italian held. They might still be German held if there's a DAC in play or something like that. So I don't think they're going to be at their full income. And so that makes building jet fighters even less likely for how expensive they are. Now, back to the fact that you might actually have an Air Force, long range aircraft actually is maybe a desirable one. Maybe not top tier, but it's worth considering, especially if you do invest in that second fighter. And you're like, yeah, I'm gonna build an extra fighter or two, if you really want to go all in and land all that stuff over in Britain to go free French, and then I know when I liberate Paris and France comes back, I'll be able to actually finish rolling for it, assuming I didn't already have it beforehand, which you're not likely to, and then start immediately getting the bonuses for long range aircraft. And if you've got a bomber and two fighters, yeah, that's you can go escort. You've got two fighters to escort and start bombing northern Italy or Bavaria and whatnot. So yeah, I think long range aircraft is a viable one to pick if you are planning for eventually the likelihood of liberating Paris. Advanced subs, probably not. Large ship construction, no. Heavy strat bombers, no. Strat rockets, no. Again, Britain's far better off going for them than you are. Way more better off going for them than you are. And I still think that's an outside play in terms of the likelihood for Britain even going for them. So I wouldn't even bother. Improves logistics. This really doesn't do anything for France. Um, Double strategic rail movement in all regions. Well, you're not going to have a lot of regions to be railing around in to begin with, unless you're really rolling into Italy or something, and coming into the Balkans via northern Italy. It's like, okay, well then it would be nice to have a lot of rail to shift guys around as you need. But again, that's a real kind of long shot play. I don't see that being an issue. They don't really have to worry about the different gauges, unless something is going on in here in Spain. Again, that's on the outside of things. extra strategic naval movement. Yeah, what is that really going to do for them at that point? And then I mean, your factory is already in such a great spot anyway, very centralized. You build units, and then they can immediately go into any one of the home country regions that you need them. And if you build units that have a movement of two, they can already be into uh, northern Italy or Germany or into Belgium, into Bavaria or into Belgium, right from where they were built. So it's already in a great spot. Where else are you going to really want to move it? Maybe up to Alsace-Lorraine, but again, I don't think the likelihood of that is very high. So now, when I say, so with that in mind, I look at it in two minds. If, what am I going to roll for with my single die, assuming France, and usually it's going to be assuming France is going to fall. And what kind of text would I like to be able to liberate France and immediately start rolling for again? That may actually have an impact in the game. But at the same time, if France does, in the outside chance, the off chance survive, am I going to have regretted rolling for the text that I did in hopes that I would liberate it? And in that sense, the one that the two technologies that check both those boxes, where if I can continue to live beyond the initial German attack and continue to roll for tech, I'll be happy with the decisions I made about which text to roll for. Great. And at the same time, if I fall and then I end up liberating Paris later on in the game, will I be happy with the tech choices that I had made prior to the French surrender? And now that I can start rolling again, and the two technologies that tick both those boxes are, for me personally, are going to be advanced mech and advanced artillery. So those are the two that I think are top tier for France in either one of those scenarios. But again, there are other reasons to go for possible like long range aircraft. I think long range aircraft is a viable choice depending on how you are playing. Because if France does survive and you've built extra aircraft, well, okay, great. They now have a chance of getting long range aircraft. And if you liberate Paris and you had a lot of aircraft go free French, or you got at least a bunch, then as soon as you liberate Paris, it's like, all right, great, we're going to start rolling for long range aircraft again. So long range aircraft, I think, is a viable choice too, but it's still secondary to armor and mech, in my opinion. So yeah, that's my take on French technology. Um, I have no doubt that there is some permutations of this that maybe I didn't consider because this isn't something that most people put a lot of thought into. Uh, I mean, I even when I first started playing this game, I didn't even bother rolling for friends. There are games I didn't even bother rolling. Now, in hindsight, I should have, and now I will because that does make sense. And I always told myself, well, I mean, hell, if France gets to roll for tech, then we'll pick up a bunch of dice and count the turns that they should have been able to roll for the tech. But of course, that's not a great solution either because then you're kind of doing that with hindsight. But that's the kind of the reality of the French situation is 90% of the time, 99% of the time, they're going to fall at some point in the game, and those are the only two times you get to worry about tech is right before they fall or if they liberate Paris. So that's my take on their tech and their options and what is worth rolling for them when you can. If you've got anything I missed or maybe you disagree with my assessment, leave some comments below. And yeah, so for right now, this is Winamute signing off from the think tank. So long and thanks for all the fish.